Hello, class. This is Marcos. It's week 6, and this is the briefing video for our next steps on our projects for our class. This is a transition week where we are completing our baby board books. Last night we had our final presentations with Demi, and everyone, or most everyone, shared their final books, and we had some really great feedback and lots of good participation from everybody, and just excited to see the results that you guys have come up with in 5 or 6 short weeks of working together. So we'll discuss the next steps in getting those final files prepared and sent to me, because our next step is to get these books ready to be sent and to send them to our printer so that we can begin to make the copies that we can share to each of you. So I'll talk about that. And then I'll also talk about our next project, which is our storybooks. And I'll just start with the first part of the assignment briefing for part 1, because we have a goal of having to kind of figure out what our stories are going to be. And I want to give you a head start in starting to select those story options to kind of figure out what you're going to create your book based on. So I'm going to talk about that. But there will be a second video this week later on, before Monday, probably Sunday, that will give you a further briefing on the whole project and how to approach it and what to do next. So let's just talk about these final files for the baby book. First of all, a lot of you got some good insights from Demi and other students and myself, and you may find that there are some edits or revisions that are still needed. As we talked about last night, of course, make sure you think about them and that you apply only the things that you think make sense, and that you're not making changes just based on what other people think are best. You know what's best for you. Think about your audience and refine it as best you can. But again, this is a big opportunity here. So let's make sure your book is as perfect as possible and that you're doing your best to show your concept and visualize your idea for your story. And the text, as we talked about, was kind of a big focus. So make sure you review that one last time. Look at the nuances of how the text should be, make sure it's consistent and makes sense, and look at it from the perspective of the reader, whether it's the caregiver, the parent, the babysitter, the big brother, big sister, the grandparent, or whether it's actually the toddler themselves when they're on the older side of the scale and they're interacting with the book and maybe even reading it. So think about that. But again, know who your audience is. We go from a range of no text in a book to a lot of text, and that's perfectly good. And actually what I was hoping for, because there are lots of kinds of scenarios that will be happening with kids and who's reading with them. All right, so the big thing we're going to do with preparing these files once you've refined them, and I want to say for sure that if you're doing refinements and you're doing revisions, I want you to please share them with me and just make sure we're on the same page so that you kind of have a sign off on what you're doing. So the next big thing is then to prepare your files. And this will become kind of a production aspect that each of you should know a little bit about in terms of working on print projects. And when working on a print project, it's about delivering files to a printer in a way that they're able to best and most efficiently be able to create the manufacturing parts, the plates, and the applying those plates to a printer and ink on paper. And it is just like I said, manufacturing, and it's something that is important that files are sent in a responsible way. And the way to best ensure that is to do something called packaging a file, and that's actually a feature in Adobe InDesign. And the key to that is that packaging a file allows not only the file to be saved, but it also gathers the links, whether you're using TIFFs or JPEGs from Adobe Illustrator or from Photoshop. It gathers all those to make sure they're all connected. And also, most importantly, it gathers the fonts you've used so that when we open it on our end, things aren't missing, things are not included or not opening, and we have the ability to easily open your file, and then the printer will also have the easy ability to open your file. So as you all, I think, have been doing I haven't noticed anybody not doing this, but everyone should be working from the template that was provided. And if you still need that, it's on this week's Canvas assignment briefing page. You can download that if you haven't yet, but make sure you're using the template and that it's 8 pages. The cover and back are the first page with the spine, with the logos. Again, the logo on the front has to be black with a white box around it, as seen here. You can barely see the white box around it. And the logo on the spine shouldn't have the box around it and can be white or black, or it could be a color. If you wanted it to be like a darker version of this pink, for example, it could be that. And again, make sure your name is applied to the back here with so that you're credited. If you don't do that, we'll do it for you, but it'd be easier if you guys just did it. But the main thing that you're going to have to look out for now is what's called a bleed. And a bleed is an allowance on a page that protects from trimming. So when you trim something and your image goes off the page, you don't want to have your image end right at the page, because you need to have a tolerance for how things get cut. And when you stack paper together, they may like kind of shift a little bit. And when you cut it, it may chop off more than you think or less than you think. Not by a lot, but printers want to ensure that doesn't become a problem and there isn't like a white edge. So a bleed is extending what is called your live area. And your live area is what you see here in white. That's literally the size of the book. And that's what you're expecting to see. But the bleed is this area outside this red outline here. That goes around the entire book layout. And that's the bleed area. So this kind of like gray area between this red line and where the white begins. That's sort of this safeguard, so that if the trimming is off, it doesn't show white, or doesn't. So everyone's background needs to extend beyond that. And what that basically means is that if you're currently, probably most of you have your pages going to the live area, the black line. And what you need to do, like right here, what you need to do then is extend your image area so that it covers the bleed area. Hopefully that's not a big deal for anyone, because like in this example, it's just simply a InDesign box with color applied. But you may have an image that butts to the bottom and there's nothing else below it. So you may have to extend your image. You may have to extend a graphic you made so that it goes further than what you thought it would. So if that's the case, please do that, because that's going to tie us up if we find that there is not enough image area. You also could enlarge your image a bit, but find a way to make sure that all your images that are included in your layout can translate to this kind of bigger size. All right, and then once you've done that, it'll be you save your file. Make sure there's a name your file with the title of your book and your first and last name, or your last name, or something, so that we know that it's you and it's what title the book is. Don't just have to be Untitled 12 or something like that. And then package your file. And the way you do that is you come up here to the file menu at the top, and if you press on it and go down here, there's a indicator here that says package, and that's the feature we want. So when you hit package, you'll get this window, and basically what you need to just worry about for sure is this first summary page. And in this summary page, you can see there's actually an alert, and this alert is telling us that you're using 5 fonts, but 2 of the fonts are missing. And if we look back on the page, we actually see right here that this font here is missing. And the second font, I suspect, and some of you might be having this problem already, is DERT's font, Accidens Grotesque. And for some reason, when we package our folder, it doesn't always work with everybody. If that's the case for you, that's okay. Don't worry, you don't have to have the Accidens Grotesque font, the font for the DERT text. When you send it back to us, we will have it here, so it won't matter. So if you're missing that font, don't stress, don't worry. It probably looks okay when you're, it doesn't look pixelated, so it's not a problem. So everyone might have 1 missing font, Accidens Grotesque, or 2, like the bold and the regular. But your font, this font here, I think it's called Tilde, is missing. And if we don't have it, or if it's not an Adobe font that we can activate, then if it's something you purchased, make sure you send that to us. All right, so then once you do that, you hit package and follow the prompts. But those are the main things. To worry about that the fonts are there and that the links are all connected. All right, and here's the Canvas assignment sheet. And again, here's the book template in case you haven't done that yet. And to give you more details on how to package a file if you're having trouble, there's a PDF with several pages that go into more detail. So check that out if you're having trouble. And also if you're having trouble, just reach out to me. And then there's a link here to the Google Drive. So everyone should package their folders as soon as possible. I'd like to get started, even early next week, because we have to go through every one of them. So once you do that, if you could post them to the Part 6 Final Files folder on the Google Drive, and then your next step will be just to hopefully not hear from us because something's missing or the leads aren't right, but hopefully your next step will be to see your book. Okay, so here's just an initial briefing on the Storybook project. I'm going to get more into this in my next video over the weekend or by Monday morning for you, depending where you're at. But basically what we're going to do next is we're going to work on this format from DERT, which is one of the original formats we developed, which is the Storybook. And the Storybook is an 8x10 paperback book. So it's a little more dexterous, or it's a little more flexible. And these books are meant to be for sort of the next stage from the audience who've been working for the toddler, from anyone who can kind of hear and understand. So the 3 to 3-year-olds. So it does cross over potentially into the audience we had with the baby board book. But this is a more engaged reader who's not going to want to be reaching out, grabbing the book because they're fascinated by the shapes they see. It'll be a more disciplined kid who's listening and looking at pictures and interacting in a little more mature way than an infant would be doing. But it can also extend to older ages, even to the point where it becomes sort of a book that a 6 or 7-year-old might start reading on their own, or an 8-year-old might read for not for learning, but for fun, or even 9 or 10. So it's kind of in that range. But this genre of book kind of started off in this sort of classic tales that are in our culture and have been for a long time. Things like the Three Little Pigs, or Little Red Riding Hood, or Goldilocks, the Ant and the Grasshopper, or the Three Billy Goats Gruff. Stories that we've all heard, maybe we haven't, or it's stories that have been passed on. And part of DERT's mission is to kind of like keep those stories going, to keep telling them because of the lessons they teach us, not so much just for the fun factor or for the for the interactions that happen and the enjoyment you get out of it, but also to learn different values that are important in like human existence. And the approach we've taken has varied from literally taking a story like this Aesop story and kind of sticking to the story, probably most likely not literally using the text that you get provided or that you find, but taking the text and modernizing it some level so that you're telling a story, but based on the story itself. Like we did this with the Ant and the Grasshopper, or Goldilocks is still the same traditional story, but the thing that changes and modernizes it is just the approach that Goldilocks takes in terms of how the character is portrayed, bringing in a different kind of young woman with unexpected external appearances, a person of color. And it also takes things like the Three Little Pigs and modernizes them by utilizing today's technology and having these pigs still build their 3 houses and still having a big bad wolf trolling them, trying to knock their houses down, but they're communicating to each other via their smartphones, and Emojis are used, obviously on this cover, but even within the storybook, you'll see them texting each other and you'll see screens, and it's actually quite fun. Or the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Here's where you start seeing kind of a change where the title has changed. It's called Red. And in Red, it's the traditional setup of a young person who is a young lady, but it doesn't go out of its way to make her look like a her. It's and the skin color is blue just to keep it not specific to any demographic. And in this case, Red is, finds herself needing to save her grandmother, but instead of being kind of a victim, she uses her wits and her smarts and her courage and her tools to overcome the situation and save her grandmother. And this example here takes the idea of modifying a story even further, where this is the student selected the story or the prompt of The Ugly Duckling. And we all know that's about a duck who is not so good looking and doesn't fit into its peer group, or doesn't get accepted by his friends because of his appearance or her appearance. And it turns out The Ugly Duckling is a swan. In this book, it takes away animals and it turns it into humans, but it still uses the sort of the basis of the story. So uses bird names for its friends or the people that Ducky encounters. And Ducky's a young boy and doesn't fit in, and he gets mocked, and he doesn't know why he doesn't fit in, but eventually he meets a friend who's a makeup artist, and he gets a makeover, and Ducky changes sort of the way he looks and identifies and has a more feminine side to him. So this sort of idea of modern dialogue about sexuality and gender can be brought into a book or a story like The Ugly Duckling. So that kind of shows how you can take things in a further way. We're also trying to go beyond those kind of classic stories, and we've looked into stories from different cultures. So we've done several books that are based on different Native American legends, and we've also delved into other cultures, folklore or mythology from Asian countries, from Latin American countries. And that's sort of what we want to push even more, to kind of develop a wide range of books from stories that you may have heard of with a new twist, or stories that you never heard of that are worth telling. Okay, so the way we normally do this is we'll have a class in a classroom, and I would pin up on the wall a bunch of options and have the class kind of engage in a choice selection process. And that would mean that everyone would see the stories and kind of write down their first, second, and third choice, and then we would see who wants what, and kind of negotiate what's the best choice for each person. And since we're not in that live classroom anymore, I'm going to try to simulate that using this mural board. And so you can see here, to do that, first thing I've done is I've researched and I've put together various options that range from books that you may have heard of, like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or it's not even really a book, it's a nursery rhyme, or Jack and Jill, or Humpty Dumpty, and use those as options or more prompts to be stories that could be adapted or adopted, to become a new version of what that story is. In my next video, I'll show more examples of that, but those can be treated in a traditional way, or they could be treated in a modernized way, and that's kind of what your decision will be. So when you look at these from the lens of either I'm interested in creating a story that's more original, that's more contemporary, or you may want to take a story like The Pied Piper and just say, I just want to do that in a classic way, and I want to work on illustrating it and maybe modernize the text a little bit, and that's okay too. But if that's your intention, then like The Pied Piper, or Casey at the Bat, which is like this classic old time baseball story, or Johnny Appleseed, those might be better to pick from. If they're more, the more traditional they are, the more that they're probably able to be interpreted in a simple way. And you also notice that there are some book titles here that are already books that we've done, and you know, be aware of that. But finding new ways of doing a book is always interesting. So the way I want this to work is that on the left side here, you'll see there's choice 1, choice 2, choice 3. And the reason for that is, you know, if you come on the board and we see that there's only one person who has choice 1, and let's say that Ivy wants the Three Little Pigs, and nobody else wants it, then Ivy gets it. But if there's like 3 people who want the Three Little Pigs, then we have to kind of figure out, you know, who's how to, or I guess I'll have to decide who gets it and who doesn't. So seeing what your second or third choice will be important. So we have kind of this, basically everyone's name, at least should be on here. I hope I haven't left anybody out. If I have, please just type your name out in the color. But it says 1, 2, and 3 next to your name, which signifies the first, second, or third choice, and the color also will help. And basically you just need to take your name and drag it. So Leanne can take her name and put it here on the Pied Piper. And then Leanne could take number 2 and decide that she wants to do a handful of clay maybe. And then Leanne could take number 3 and take it over to this, let's say, the rock and the bubble. And then when everyone starts doing that, we'll begin to see what the choices are. Now, you may want to come back and look at how this is progressing over the weekend and today, so that you can maybe modify if you see like, oh, 5 people want my first choice, but I do want to do the selfish giant and nobody wants that. So I would encourage you to go back and then to make that change so that it'll be easier for us to decide if we can see that there's a competition going on over one specific title, then yes, maybe it's better for you to make that change rather than me. The other thing to consider is some of these are stories that are come from specific cultures. For example, the flood myth of the Incas. That's obviously from South America or from Peru or maybe Bolivia, but Peru. And Sophia is Peruvian, so it just has to be that Sophia should get first choice on that, and I think she already expressed she wants it. So chances are that's going to be Sophia's book unless she doesn't want it. But right of first refusal should probably go to someone if it's from their culture. And then the other choice, I want to make this so that you have a way to, you know, a way to kind of guide yourself towards a book concept or a book story, a story for your book. And in order to help do that better, I also wanted to let you know that each of these below here are links. And let me take you to the actual page. Here's the actual page. And each of these have links. So if you click on the small text at the bottom, then you'll be able to see that, for example, if I click on this old man, then without clicking on it, I'll just cheat. Then you'll go to a link that has either the text itself, or it might have a Wikipedia page or a page that talks about the story itself. So sometimes there's actual text you can use, like right here, like you can literally use this to be your book. And it's actually a song as well. And it's probably for this kind of thing, like literally this old man, I would think that you don't change this text at all. So this is a good example of using something where you're not interested in changing the text or putting a twist on the story. This would be a good example of that. But each of these stories have a link to them. And again, you can go further into researching what the story is about, but this way you have a quick way of like understanding each of these. And then the last and most important thing is this text out, is this tile down here at the bottom, which is basically your own story concept. So I want to stay open to the idea of each of you being able to create a story on your own. And it doesn't mean that you starting from any of these stories won't end up as your own story, and I'll show examples of that in my next video. But this is another place where you can just say, like, I already have an idea, or I want to come up with an idea and I want to write my own story. That's something you can do as well. All right, so I would like everyone to please create this or to interact with this and put your first 3 choices on here as soon as possible, so that by Monday we can decide, so that you're able to then know what your story is and do your research and create your deck that kind of showcases the story choice you made, and does some research on it, and kind of begins the, I don't want to go maybe as far with the concept as we did last time, because this is kind of a lot to do this week, but at least we have the research and we have the beginnings of a conversation to what you might want to do with your story. And yeah, you can begin the design inspiration research and putting together some mood boards, but I'm going to be a little bit flexible on how far you should go, just based on the time we have, and have that more be on week after next assignment. So it's mostly about picking a book, understanding the story, and getting a general idea, so we can have a discussion in next class in our small groups. All right, I think that's it for this one. Please come to this link. I will share with you so that you'll get an email, so you can get on this mural board easily. And again, package up your finalize your baby board books and send me post the packaged files that include fonts and all the links and the InDesign file into the class Google Drive in the folder. Thanks so much, everyone, and we will see you. I'll see you in my next video in a day or two.